Hey guys, back with another video. The game of the year video. I do these every year. Always one of my favorite videos to make. I don't know why. I really enjoy these videos. So yeah, my top 10 games of 2014. And I'm going to talk about like dishonorable mentions and honorable mentions and just 2014 in general. After the list, I figure I'll just do the list right away so you guys can see what games were my favorites of the year, and then I'll talk a bit about other stuff at the end of the video. So let's get right into it. At number 10 is South Park: The Stick of Truth. Now, this game actually made me more of a South Park fan than I had been for a long time. I grew up on South Park. It was one of my favorite shows back, from like season 3 to 8. I think that was like when it was at its best. Season 5 and 6 were like my favorites. Like to me, those were like that was the peak. Um, but then I kind of stopped watching it. And then this game came around, and I thought, oh, cool, a South Park RPG where, done by Obsidian, and Trey Parker and Matt Stone are heavily involved and wrote the script. Um, and yeah, this game really surprised me. It's not the deepest RPG ever. It definitely lacks some challenge, but it's easily the funniest game I've ever played. It has that awesome South Park humor. It makes fun of a lot of video game tropes, which I really appreciated. And as a huge fan of RPGs, this one and Paper Mario, which this was definitely inspired by. It's got a turn-based battle system where you have to time your attacks with button presses, and I've always loved that kind of battle system. And to see that this game had that, it was awesome. It's just a really funny game that definitely surprised me and got me back into South Park. I've been actually watching it and keeping up with the show now. So yeah, definitely a great game that I was not expecting to enjoy nearly as much as I did. Um, yeah, South Park: The Stick of Truth is a great game for sure. At number 9 is The Wolf Among Us. Now this game, I was considering not including it on the list because the first episode did actually come out last year and not this year. But as a complete package, it came out this year. And with Telltale games, I like to wait until all of the episodes are out and play them back to back. So that's what I did with The Wolf Among Us. And I like this better than The Walking Dead, which actually made number one on my Game of the Year list in 2012. Was it 20? Yeah, 2012. Which actually, looking back on that list, I probably wouldn't have given it number one again. Probably Virtue's Last Reward, I think I ranked a bit too low. That would probably be in my number one if I had to do that list again. But The Wolf Among Us, yeah, I like it better than Walking Dead. It's more my style. It's got like this film noir kind of style to it. It's very violent. It's very dark. It's very moody. I love the atmosphere to this game. The music is fantastic. Really fantastic characters that have a lot of depth to them. They're like the writing is as with all Telltale games. The writing is absolutely fantastic. There are some things I'm not too big on. The ending is I'm not super big on the ending. And as much as I love The Wolf Among Us, I don't know if I'm like super ready to be playing a sequel to this, like a part two or season 2 already. But I played Walking Dead season 2 this year, and I really enjoyed that as well. So I think I'm still going to be looking forward to it. But what I loved most about this game was just how unique it is. I hadn't heard of the Fables comics, so going into this, I was surprised with how original it was. So yeah, if you're into Telltale games, I definitely highly recommend The Wolf Among Us. It's got a great story, great characters, great writing, and it's more my style as opposed to like the zombies of The Walking Dead. Although those games are of course fantastic too, but yeah, Telltale games, every game they make, so at least so far, I've absolutely loved. And I can't wait till Game of Thrones, that whole all those episodes are released. I can definitely see that making my Game of the Year list in 2015. At number 8 is Tales of Xillia 2. Actually a pretty big surprise for me this year. This game, with the Tales games, I've always enjoyed them, but I've never found their storylines to actually be all that great. But Xillia 2 easily has probably my favorite storyline in the entire series. you know, it is Return to Mother Base, I think, was saying, you know, it's everything a sequel should be, and I agree completely. To me, like, Tales of Xillia 2 blows the first one out of the water, and that made my Game of the Year list last year at, I think, like number 5 or something. But this is only number 8. Uh, so basically, maybe you know, this year maybe is not so bad with games that I can think of. You know, 7 games better than Xillia 2, or that I enjoyed more. But last year I can only think of 4 games I enjoyed more than Xillia 1, and yet I like Xillia 2 better than Xillia 1. Yeah, the characters and storyline this time around are fantastic. Obviously the same characters from the, well, at least most of the same characters from the first game, but I loved seeing like how things progressed from the first game to the second, and how the characters changed. The battle system is, you know, generally the same as with Tales of Xillia 1, but a really fast-paced, fun battle system. You know, it's in a lot of ways it is your standard Tales game. You know, the world map is still not really a thing. You know, but you know, it's just a really fun game, and I liked a lot of the changes they did to gameplay. But I mean, like I said, it is your standard Tales game. But I think the fact that the storyline in this was so good kind of makes it rise above most Tales games for me. And you know, I've said the Tales series is one of my favorite series of all time. And I got to admit, it's kind of dropping a bit after playing more RPGs, and just after playing like Tales of Hearts, which I was also considering for the list. But Xillia 2, I think, was a much better Tales game. Maybe I am kind of getting a bit sick of Tales games at this point. I still really enjoy them, but maybe that's a reason why this is a bit lower on the list compared to some of the other games. But yeah, still really enjoyable. If you love Tales games or love JRPGs with really fast-paced battle systems, action RPG battle system, yeah, I think you're really going to enjoy this. Obviously, you do need. I would say you do need to play the first game. You'll get the most out of this if you've played Tales of Xillia 1. But yeah, a pleasant surprise, because you know the storyline really surprised me in this one. At number 7 is Bayonetta 2, a game I expected this to be a bit higher on the list, but still an amazing game nonetheless. I hadn't played. You know, Bayonetta 1 was always one of my favorite character action games, and character action games, like, it's a genre that I haven't been feeling for the past few years. I've played a couple, and I just haven't really enjoyed them as much as like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry 3, for instance. But Bayonetta 2. It comes with the first one, which already is a huge bonus on the Wii U. I didn't play through that again, but I did jump straight into number 2, and after playing it twice, 2 playthroughs, I have to say, I think this beats the first one in almost every way. In fact, the only thing about Bayonetta 2 I didn't really care for was, well, I won't say I didn't care for it, but it was a bit disappointing compared to the first one, was the final boss itself. I think it was a tad disappointing, but the story makes a bit more sense than the first one, is a bit more enjoyable, but it's still basically nonsense. You know, the main character, Bayonetta, is still a great character, and there is some humor that works here and there, but you're going to play this game for the gameplay, and the gameplay is fucking phenomenal. It's super fast-paced, super easy to pick up. You can get through the game with only learning a few combos, but there is an insane amount of depth if you want to look for it, and you can look up on like YouTube videos that people have done to see just how in-depth this combat system can get. Which time I think is such a great feature for these character action games. You know, the game just constantly one-ups itself in terms of insanity. Like, the bosses in this game are fucking insane, and you know, the first one was crazy enough, but this one, man, it takes it to a whole other level. To me, Bayonetta 2 is a much better paced game than the first one. It's short, it will only take you like 10 hours or so, but I find it to be a more replayable game, because immediately after I finished it once, I jumped in and played through it again, and there's still some higher difficulties to tackle. There's a kind of a cool multiplayer mode thrown in there. You know, tons of items and things to buy, cool Nintendo costumes and features that I don't really want to spoil. The game's just a blast. Just one of the most pure fun games I've played in 2014. At number 6 is Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. A bit of a polarizing game, actually, for a lot of people I know. Now, it's no surprise that I'm a huge platformer fan. I grew up on platformers, and I grew up on the Donkey Kong Country games. So I was really looking forward to this. Now, Donkey Kong Country Returns, I actually didn't like too much. That game had some issues, but Tropical Freeze, to me, improves upon that game in so many ways. It's ridiculous. And this is one of the best platformers I've played in a few years, I gotta say. You know, it's got a perfect level of challenge, which is something I always look for in a platformer, and this game's got challenge. You know, I died quite a bit playing through this game. Some really cool levels and theming to the levels. You got new characters this time around, Cranky Kong and Dixie Kong, and I really like the abilities between each character. I think it kind of opens up the level designs in some interesting ways, and you got to use all the characters to get 100%, which is something I didn't do. You know, it's challenging enough beating this game, but to get 100% in it is absolutely insane. Props to anyone that can do that shit. I certainly can't. Yeah, just a really, really fun game, and I have to mention the soundtrack. The soundtrack by David Wise, composer for Donkey Kong Country 2, I think 1 as well. The soundtrack in this game, easily in my top 2 soundtracks of the year. Just an amazing soundtrack. It's a beautiful game, very vibrant, tons of colors, and there's a cool co-op mode that I've played quite a bit. The game is still really fun in 2-player mode. Quite a bit harder. You both have to be on pretty equal skill levels for it to be not a complete mess, but still very fun. So yeah, you know, this definitely ranks a bit high on the list because I think it's one of the best platformers I've played in a long time. Like, the level design I thought was amazing. A lot of people harp on the controls, which I guess that might be something that you're either going to love or hate. I got used to the controls pretty quick. The game doesn't quite have the speed of the original Donkey Kong Country games, and a lot of the game is based on, like, a lot of times you'll have to, like, stand in one place and wait for things to happen, or, like, pull things out of the ground, and there's a bit more maybe puzzle type elements to this game's platforming, but I got used to it, and with a Wii U Pro controller, I thought it controlled great. So yeah, I really enjoyed this game. It really caught me by surprise, considering how much I wouldn't say I hated Donkey Kong Country Returns, but it certainly wasn't one of my favorites. It was actually kind of disappointing in a way. But Tropical Freeze was amazing. Absolutely loved this game. At number 5 is Dragon Age Inquisition. The last game I finished this year, and yeah, it remains one of my favorites. You know, I talked about this a lot in the review, so I'm going to keep things short here, but yeah, a massive improvement over the second Dragon Age game, which I actually didn't hate, to be honest. I actually liked Dragon Age 2, but this is better in almost every way. You have that, you know, that great BioWare writing, those great BioWare characters. The storyline, I thought, you know, wasn't all that great, but I certainly loved the writing and the characters. But one of my favorite things about this game was just how like, you really felt powerful in this game, and you really felt like a leader of this faction. I loved the Inquisition aspect of the game. You know, where you have your own keep, and you can send people to be executed, or, you know, have them work for you, and you recruit people to your cause, and the world kind of changes based around how you're doing, how your Inquisition is doing. I found that really fascinating. The battles I thought were really fun. I thought there was a lot of variety in combat based on what class you were going for. I loved all the loot you got. You know, it was a deeper RPG than I expected from BioWare, which I think they've been slacking in that area for quite a while now. And, you know, it was just nice to be playing a BioWare game again that wasn't a complete, or, well, I wouldn't say complete, that wasn't disappointing in some way, like Mass Effect 3 and Dragon Age 2. And, in fact, Dragon Age Inquisition is probably my favorite game in the Dragon Age series. And it gives me high hopes for the new Mass Effect game, which, you know, I wasn't really looking forward to all that much. But after playing through this, yeah, I gotta say, I'm looking forward to that. Inquisition is not a perfect game. There's a lot of things that bug me about it. You know, there's glitches all over the place. Like I said before, I didn't think the story was actually all that great. It's an ugly game. And, you know, the menus can be a pain to navigate. The loading times are absolutely ridiculous. It crashed on me a few times. Like, there's issues with the game for sure, but I was enjoying myself with this game just so much, and it's absolutely massive. I didn't finish near all the amount of content there is to this game. I can definitely see myself going back to it. It definitely has a lot of replay value. So yeah, it's, despite my problems with the game, it still ranks very highly for me. During an Age of Inquisition, a nice surprise this year. At number 4 is Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. I can't say too much about this game. It's a very story-driven game, and for those that haven't played it, I don't want to spoil it. I'll just say, if you love storylines in games, and you love really fucked up, dark, but at the same time humorous and twisted storylines, you'll really love this. The sequel also came out this year. I was wondering which one to choose, and I just went with the first one. I think I did enjoy it a bit more. Some of the gameplay changes they made in the second one for the Clash Trials, I think, didn't work out too well. Improved Hangman's Gambit, for instance. Like, that's not improved. Like, it was terrible. It was made worse. There's some Clash Trial stuff that I just preferred in the first game. But the second game wraps things up in a great way. This game, very unique, and it's made me love the visual novel genre more than I would have expected to. 999 and VLR are still my favorites in the genre, but these two games are also fantastic. Plenty of cool plot twists. It's always fun figuring out these Clash Trials and who the culprits are. Really great characters, really great writing. It kind of avoids a lot of like the anime trope type stuff. This game, it kind of turns that kind of stuff on its head based on the characters you meet and how the storyline turns out. Again, I don't want to spoil too much. The game's pretty damn insane. It's got more gameplay than most visual novel games. Like VLR and 999 had puzzles. These have like Phoenix Wright type trials with a lot of gameplay added to them that are really fun. I really get excited for that kind of stuff. You can explore and talk to a lot of the people in the game and kind of get to know them better. So there's like a friendship aspect to the game. Yeah, again, I don't want to say too much on this game, but it's very unique. There's nothing quite like it out there, and it's easily, I think, the most underrated game of 2014, because, it doesn't have a whole lot of mainstream appeal, unfortunately, and I think a lot of people just skipped out on it because of the name, and they'll dismiss it as some quirky Japanese game. And that's a real shame, because I think this is a must-play for even people that don't like visual novels. I think if you're up for like a really twisted game with a lot of surprises, you'll enjoy this. I can't see too many people not liking this game. So it's a shame that it doesn't get a lot of mainstream attention, like in terms of awards and stuff like that. I never saw this game on like any lists. Like the Video Game Awards, for example, for like Best Handheld Game, this wasn't in there, and it's a real shame. I think more people need to give games like this a chance. And certainly, if you haven't played Danganronpa, it's probably cheap by now. Go out and play it. It's easily one of my favorites of the year. At number 3 is Shovel Knight. This fucking game. This game was amazing. Now, I hadn't really followed this game's Kickstarter, which is a shame, but Shovel Knight is basically everything I loved about my childhood in terms of gaming. This is the kind of game I grew up on. It takes inspiration from Mega Man, DuckTales, Castlevania, Super Mario Bros. 3, The Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2 in particular, and it has all the elements of those old games, but it has a lot of cool modern design sensibilities. It takes inspiration from Dark Souls even, with its checkpoint system where you can kind of destroy checkpoints for extra gold, but if you die, you go all the way back. It's got a perfect level of challenge. Some people thought it was maybe a bit on the easy side, and maybe it is a bit, but I thought it kind of ramped up very nicely. It's got this great, it's kind of 8-bit. I'd say it's like in between 8 and 16-bit look to it. Very vibrant, very colorful. The music is fucking amazing. Kind of chiptune-ish music, but it like, this game feels like something that would be on the NES, maybe one of those later NES games. But man, in terms of like a platformer, this is the best I've played since Super Meat Boy, and that came out quite a while ago. Like, the level design in this game was phenomenal. always introducing new ideas and new mechanics and improving upon them in some ways. Each level was completely different from the rest, and I looked forward to each new boss. They have like a Mega Man thing going on with all the bosses. They're all different kind of knights. Tinker Knight in particular was my favorite. Like, that was an amazing boss. In fact, all the boss battles were amazing. Very reflex based. And very action-packed, and played quite a bit differently than I was used to in games like this, like these old-school platformers. The game's got a lot of humor to it. It's got like a Zelda 2 style thing going on where you've got your kind of map where you go from level to level, but you've got like a town, which is kind of your hub world, where you can buy equipment and items and things like that, and there's like townsfolk there. Like, there's so much to say about this game. Like, it's like easily one of my favorite indie games in a long time, and Yacht Club Games, I'm definitely going to support whatever they do from now on, because this just, when I first played this, I was like, oh, the childhood. It made me nostalgic, even though obviously this wasn't made back then. But it's everything I loved about the games I played growing up, the Mega Mans, the Marios, the Zeldas, and like, it was just such a satisfying game. There's a lot of content to it too. You beat the game once, and then you can do a new game plus. There's tons of collectibles. It's not too long. It's just the right length. Even the storyline, there's not much of a storyline, but it's got a lot of heart to it. I don't really want to spoil that aspect to it, but man, like, what a pleasant surprise. Yeah, like I said, my favorite platformer since Meat Boy, and if you love platformers, you owe it to yourself to play Shovel Knight. Such a fantastic game. At number 2 on my list, perhaps the biggest surprise, Hearthstone. Yeah, I talked about this in a games I've played recently video, and I was enjoying it then. Now I'm actually obsessed with this game. It's almost a dangerous obsession because it's a free-to-play game, and I'm always extremely tempted to spend real money on booster packs and arena runs. But yeah, I'm full-on obsessed with this game now. I've watched like professional streamers for this game. I'm always watching YouTube videos on Hearthstone. I'm fiddling around with all these different deck ideas. I'm obsessed with this game, and like, I'm playing it every day at least. Anytime there's a new quest to get new gold, I'm doing it. Anytime I have enough gold to do an arena run, I'm doing it. It is this dangerous obsession at this point, but I cannot deny how much fun I've had playing this game. It's insanely fun, and I haven't been this obsessed over like a card game or like such a small game like this in a long time. It's a perfect game for me to play alongside other games, and that's what I've been doing with this game. It's insanely addictive too. Once you have those runs where you have a bunch of gold and you can do a couple arena runs in a row and fiddle with your decks. So yeah, the biggest surprise on this list, I think. I wasn't expecting this game to rank this high or to beat something like Shovel Knight, but I cannot deny, I look at the rest of the games, I cannot deny the hours I've put into this so far and just how obsessed I am. When I get obsessed over a game, that, to me, that's the sign that it's a quality game. And this, I'm still playing it, and this is probably one of the few games on this list that I can see myself playing well into 2015. Obviously, the big reason I got into this was the Gnomes vs. Goblins expansion that introduced a bunch of new cards, and I can't wait till new sets are released. Yeah, it's the kind of game I can see myself playing for a long time to come, and if you're interested in card games of the slightest, in fact, this game's free to play. Check it out. It might be for you. At the same time, though, it is a bit of a dangerous game. If you might find yourself tempted to spend real money on it. In a lot of ways, that's like one of the flaws with the game. A lot of people, can pay a bunch of money, get a bunch of packs, and make these amazing decks in Constructed, and it's really annoying facing those decks that have a bunch of legendary and epic cards. But surprisingly enough, it's not enough. It doesn't annoy me enough that I quit the game outright. So yeah. Definitely a big surprise for me this year, Hearthstone. Such a minor game and a free-to-play game, and yet it ranks second on my list. But what can I say? I gotta say, it's an extremely fun game. And finally, number 1, not gonna be a surprise whatsoever, Dark Souls 2. I played this game for 15 hours straight. 15 hours straight. Something I don't think I've ever done, in fact, in my entire life. That alone should say how much I love this fucking game. Obviously, Dark Souls is my favorite game of all time, so this was easily my most hyped game of all time. That is until Bloodborne next year. And, Dark Souls 2, I gotta say, there are some people out there in the Dark Souls community that find this game very disappointing compared to the first one. And in some ways, maybe it is a bit. I definitely don't enjoy it near as much. Well, I won't say near as much, but I don't enjoy it as much as Dark Souls 1. I missed that Metroidvania feel of Dark Souls, where the world felt interconnected, and it was. Dark Souls 2, you just jump from bonfire to bonfire, and I think that removed a lot of, like, the cool world design. And a lot of things, if you really pay attention, a lot of the areas in Dark Souls 2 don't actually make sense when you see how they're connected from one another. So yeah, a lot of people were disappointed with Dark Souls 2. I wasn't. It lived up to the hype for me. I was obsessed and addicted to this game. It has all the depth of the original Dark Souls. It's still got that super rewarding combat. The level of challenge is just as great as always. But most importantly, it gets my favorite aspect of Dark Souls right, and that's the exploration and discovery. So many times in this game, I found new areas to explore and new weapons hidden in nooks and crannies, and I was rewarded for my exploration and my curiosity. And that's one of my favorite things about these games. Of course, the world design is still fascinating and extremely varied. Obviously, the RPG elements are insanely in-depth. Like, it's one of the most in-depth RPGs I've ever played in terms of the different builds you can have and just the insane amount of weapons and how they act differently. Each weapon is completely different from the next. How you want to distribute your stats. In my review, I talked about this game at length and why I enjoyed it so much. But it's a follow-up to Dark Souls, and in a lot of ways it's kind of more of the same, but it just has what I love about Dark Souls in so many ways. It's the game for me. It's everything I love about video games. It's in this game. So yeah, a lot of people were disappointed with it. I wasn't whatsoever. That said, I think Bloodborne is going to blow this game out of the water. I haven't played the expansions yet, even, and this is my #1 game of the year. I have Dark Souls 2. I've played through it 3 times, I think. And now they've announced like this next gen version for PS4 that's going to have all the expansions and some new added content. So I'm actually glad I waited because I can't wait to play it again. Like, and that's the thing with these Souls games; they're so replayable, and that's awesome for someone like me that really I never like replaying games because to me, games are always great the first time, but a lot of times I just never feel in the mood to play it again. I always feel like moving on to another game, but that's not the case with the Souls games. Like, they're easily, I think, some of the most replayable games out there. So yeah, it's what can I say? Everything I said in my review still stands for Dark Souls 2. And again, like a lot of people, sure, is Dark Souls 2 not as good as the first one? Sure, it's not. Is it maybe a bit disappointing? Sure, in some aspects. A disappointing Souls game is still better than like 90% of the games that come out, at least in my opinion. I know that's a strong opinion there, but I really feel like this is like I guess another one of the reasons why I love these games so much is like it's the complete opposite of AAA game design. It's like because I just hate being held by the hand. I hate super easy games. I hate games that lack depth, and yeah, games that just like kind of want you to go in one direction and want you to play it the way the designers intended. And games like Dark Souls where I'm rewarded for playing it my own way and exploring every nook and cranny and just immersing myself in this world. Yeah, okay, I'm going on too long now, but yeah, I think it's obvious that this is my game of the year and was ever since I played it. So yeah, Dark Souls 2. If you haven't dipped your feet into the Souls series yet, I implore you, don't be discouraged by like people saying, "Oh, these are the hardest games ever." They're really not. Yes, they require some patience, but once you've played for at least a few hours, you'll start to get the hang of things. Don't be afraid to look up wikis to see what you're supposed to be doing and kind of look at the different builds you can have. Don't get discouraged by this difficulty because like really these games aren't that hard. They're really not, especially compared to like old school NES games and shit like that. If you grew up on NES and Super Nintendo games, like really hard platformers and other type games, this is not going to be a problem for you. Like maybe it is a bit more challenging than a lot of the really easy games that come out these days, but I think the difficulty of these games is completely over exaggerated. And I'm terrible at video games. Yeah, I'm awful at video games, but I can do okay with the Souls games. It's just they're just it's one of those series that just requires some patience and some understanding, and eventually get the hang of things, and it's not too bad. So yeah, Dark Souls 2 easily my game of the year for 2014. All right, so that's it, guys. That's my top 10 games of 2014. Already at 30 minutes, so this is probably going to be at least a 40-minute video because I want to talk about 2014 in general. But first, some honorable mentions. When I was making this list, there was at least 25 games that were in contention for the top 10. So yeah, that's 25 games I've played this year that I enjoyed to some extent, which is crazy. You know, a lot of people are thinking that 2014 was kind of disappointing, and in some ways it is. I think for at least for the big name titles. Destiny, Assassin's Creed Unity, Watch Dogs, what else? Titanfall. A lot of these games are coming out and are disappointing people. These big hyped games. I wasn't interested in any of those, with the exception of Watch Dogs, which I've talked about, and that's a dishonorable mention. That game's really mediocre. Didn't have a chance of making the list. But games like Destiny, it's like I played the beta, and right from the beta, I could tell like something wasn't like this is not going to live up to the hype. And it didn't. But yeah, some of the honorable mentions. Bravely Default was almost about to make the list. I know a lot of people hate that game, and there's for good reason. The second, it's at least like the second half of the game. It's terrible. I'm not going to spoil it, but yeah, it's pretty bad. I don't hate it as much as a lot of people do. I found it was easy to get over if you just kind of rushed through the ending of the game, but the actual ending of that game is actually really cool. It's a shame that a lot of people didn't make it to the actual ending and gave up before that. But Bravely Second, I think, is going to be a lot better because hopefully they'll get rid of that filler nonsense. That was close to making it. Walking Dead Season 2, I talked about, was great. Child of Light, I really liked. A lot of people didn't like that one, actually. And already, I think my list is going to be maybe a bit controversial. There's some odd choices on here. Drakengard 3 was about to make the list, but I looked at it and I thought the gameplay I didn't really like enough for it to make the list. The story was great, and then the final boss of that game to get the true ending, that really soured my experience quite a bit. I couldn't help. I always kept going back to that, and for a game to have something like that, I can't. It can't make the list. It can't for me. Wolfenstein was a solid shooter with a surprisingly good story. I didn't quite enjoy it enough to make the list. Admittedly, I'm not the biggest shooter guy, so that's probably why it didn't get up there. Final Fantasy Curtain Call, I thought that was a really great rhythm game. Didn't really enjoy that enough for it to make the list. I kind of got burnt out on that game. Hyrule Warriors was surprisingly good, I thought. Not good enough to make the list, but still enjoyable. Alien Isolation and Evil Within, two surprisingly good horror games. Evil Within, I know, gets a lot of hate. I enjoyed it, actually. I looked at it, though, and thought, yeah, you know what, that game's got a lot of issues. The storyline is garbage. So it didn't quite make the list. Freedom Wars. You know, I was playing that with Cracked Lotus, and we had a hell of a time. That said, I looked at it as a single-player game, and to me, it's just not that compelling as a single-player game, so it ultimately didn't make the list. Still really enjoyable, and definitely check out Freedom Wars. That game is underappreciated, I think. But I think the big two are Mario Kart 8 and Smash Bros. Wii U, the big two Wii U titles. Now, the reason those didn't make the list, yes, they're very fun in multiplayer. I had a blast playing those games on the AGP game nights and with friends. However, as single-player games, I just don't find them that compelling. I find myself getting very bored of them, and there's just not much to do. I mean, Smash Brothers, admittedly, yeah, there's a lot of content there, but I don't find any of it all that interesting. It's just, to me, like, Smash Brothers is a really boring game to play by myself, so I looked at those two games as complete packages, and the single-player portions of them, I just don't think stack up to the rest of the games on this list. So there's some bias there, I'll admit, because I'm much more of a single-player guy than a multiplayer guy. But yeah, surprisingly enough, those did not make the list. I think they're going to make a lot of people's lists. Um, Obviously, there's some games I hadn't played this year. There's some games like Shadows of Mordor, which I'm just not interested in. Far Cry 4, I'm sure, is great. Not really my thing. Um, the two games I would have liked to play, but they're like 80 hours long. Divinity: Original Sin and Wasteland 2 on the PC. They're like old school PC RPGs that they're supposed to be like 80 plus hours long. I don't have the time to get through those. If I did play those, the Game of the Year list wouldn't be arriving until like February, and that's a bit too late. Yeah, but my list is actually earlier this year than last year. Trying to think what else. Sunset Overdrive I would have liked to play. My brother doesn't really want to buy that game for his Xbox One, and I'm not going to buy it just to play it and return it or whatever. Although that game does look really fun. I think that might have had a shot of making the list because that game does look really good. I think that's about it. Dishonorable mentions, like I said, Watch Dogs, Conception 2. I think I talked about that game. That was a really mediocre dungeon crawler. I really didn't care for that at all. What else did I not like? See, I've played a lot of games this year, like at least 30 plus, and there's not too many games I outright disliked or thought were really mediocre. Conception 2, Watch Dogs, Persona Q I talked about. I was kind of disappointed and I kind of got burnt out on it, but I still think that's an enjoyable game. I put 50 hours into that, and most of that was enjoyable. So I think that game is actually a really good game. I'm not. It's just not for me. Whereas Watch Dogs and Conception 2, I genuinely don't really think those are that great of games. I'm trying to think, are those really the only games? Okay, I think like the big one for me, which I could get a lot of hate for this. Oh man, Steins Gate. I tried. I played that game. Well, I hesitate to say played. You don't really play that game, but 20 hours of that I went through, and I don't think I enjoyed a single minute of it. I know I'm gonna get some hate for that. I just hate the story and characters in that. Like, I can't stand the characters. Like, the one character, I forget her name already. Like, she was one of the most annoying characters I've ever seen in anything. Movies, TV, video games. I don't know, Steins Gate. Maybe there was some crazy plot twist, but I mean, 20 hours, and I was just, there's absolutely nothing hooking me. I actually can't believe I invested 20 hours into that. Yeah, I'll get some hate for that one. I know people just love Steins Gate, but I just did not care for that at all. In fact, out of all the games I've played this year, I think that was my least favorite. Which is, I know, I'll get a lot of hate for that, sorry. But yeah, just not for me, I guess. So yeah, I think that's about it. 2014 in general, I don't think it's as bad as people think it is. Okay, so there weren't many truly amazing games. And in fact, the only two I think that I outright loved were like Shovel Knight and Dark Souls 2. The rest of the games on my list, there were some things I didn't like about them all that much. Well, Danganronpa is pretty great. But but VLR and 99 are a bit better. Again, I think there's a lot of good to great games that came out this year. There just weren't too many amazing games. But like I said, I played at least 25 games that I enjoyed this year, so I think that's pretty good. Now, 2015 is going to completely blow 2014 out of the water. There's so many amazing looking games coming out next year. And yeah, that's it, guys. Yeah, I've gone on long enough. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.